Okay, so we're recording and hopefully you can hear me. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? So today we're going to talk about midterm one, everybody's favorite topic. Yay, midterms. Yeah, so exciting. So in this class, group communication, there are actually, two midterms, midterm one and midterm two. So midterm one is about the Breakfast Club, and it's a paper that you're going to be submitting through iLearn about the Breakfast Club. And you can watch the Breakfast Club through iLearn for free if you're a San Francisco State student and you're in this class. So you'll have a link there to watch the movie. And then after you watch the movie, you'll be able to write the midterm. And then you're going to submit the midterm in iLearn as well. So I hope you enjoy it. So this video today is going to be sort of talking a little bit about that and talking about the subject matter of the midterm, what goes in it, and everything. So we're going to kind of go through the prompt. So whenever you have a writing assignment, hopefully when you're in college or university, they give you a writing prompt, and that's a prompt to ask you to write something and tell you what they want you to write about. And so this class is no different. So a couple of months ago, I posted in iLearn a prompt for this assignment. So you probably saw it there. If you haven't had a chance to read it over, you can read it over. It's pretty detailed. And then we're going to actually go over it as well right now. If you want to watch this video, you can get some more information about it. Okay, so let's take a look then at the prompt. I'm going to bring it up on our screens here, so you can take a look at it. All right. So in iLearn is the prompt for the Breakfast Club essay, which is also known as midterm one. So it's midterm one, the Breakfast Club analysis essay, and you will find that in iLearn. If you have trouble finding it, you can call the IT department and they'll help you learn how to navigate iLearn and find different things like this. But this is the midterm prompt. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the prompt and kind of go through it. First, it says midterm one, the Breakfast Club analysis essay prompt. Midterm one, the breakfast analysis essay prompt. And then it says your first midterm will be to analyze the communication in the film called The Breakfast Club. So we're used to reading movie reviews, and movie reviews tell us like whether or not we like a movie and whether we should go see that movie. Like the most famous movie reviewer of all time was Roger Ebert. And if you look at rogerebert.com, you can see a review of movies. That's great, but it's actually not what we're doing here so much. He did sort of analyze movies sometimes in order to review them to see if you wanted to see them or not. But in this case, we're all watching the movie. It's not whether or not we're going to watch it or not, but rather it's an analysis of the film. And we're going to analyze the film as a way to learn more about communication and make sure that the stuff that we're studying in class actually pops out, because sometimes things, they don't really pop out very well. They just sort of sit there in the book or in the lectures. And so this makes it so that it's more tangible. If you haven't had a chance already to watch my introduction to the Breakfast Club video, you might want to watch that first before this one, because this one's more about the essay. That one talks a little bit more about the Breakfast Club and my thoughts on the Breakfast Club. So take a look at that video as well. And of course, watch the Breakfast Club movie a few times to prepare yourself for this. I'll mention earlier that the Breakfast Club is a rated R movie. It has some pretty, it has drug use, it has homophobia, it has sexism. So it's, a boundary pushing film. So just kind of warn you if you haven't watched it yet, check that out. Be aware of that. And we're going to talk about all that stuff actually in the class, either in the essays or the forums or around. Okay, so let's take a look. Next it says you can watch it in iLearn, which you can. If you have trouble watching it, I would definitely try watching it on your laptop or your desktop. I wouldn't suggest watching it on your phone or your iPad. It doesn't work quite as well there. However, some people have had luck with that. Also, take a look at which browser you're looking at. Some browsers work better than others. Okay, see, it says here, please watch the film before you start this assignment. A link to the film can be found in iLearn. And if you can't find it, check in with, again, call the IT crew, and they can help you find it. The paper will be 4 to 6 pages, 10 or 12 point font. So you get to choose the font. You can even choose 11-point font if you want, actually. But anyway, 10 or 12 font. And you can also choose which font you want. I personally like Helvetica, but some of my students like Times New Roman. You can pick the font. You'll have 1-inch margins, which you can set on Microsoft Word. Or whatever you use to write it. We accept PDFs or MS Word documents. We do not accept Google Docs, but you can write your paper on Google Docs and easily convert it in seconds to a PDF or MS Word. So if you don't know how to do that, type it into YouTube, how to convert a Google Doc to a PDF, because it can be done. It's pretty easy, actually. Typically, if you click print, a lot of times in Google Docs, it will convert it to a PDF for you. And then you can just save the PDF on your hard drive and then upload the PDF to Canvas. MS Word, for those of you who have Microsoft Word, you can use that as well. Some people use Pages. Again, like if you use Pages, which is a software package that Apple provides, you can convert it to a PDF very easily. Not a problem. Just click print, and then instead of selecting a printer, you will select a PDF, or you can say save as a PDF on there. So there's different ways to do it, but converting to a PDF is not hard at all. So if you want to use Google Docs to create the file, you can. You just can't submit through Google Docs or submit a Google Doc. If you have any trouble with that, call IT and they'll help you out, or you can contact me and I can try to help you out with that part. It says if you need assistance with the conversion process, please call the IT staff, 1-415-338-1420. They'll gladly teach you how. They can also help you submit your papers via iLearn, and how to submit papers via iLearn and whatnot. There's, it's a process. Please see your course calendar below syllabus and iLearn for details on the due date. Yeah, so you might notice that right below the syllabus in our homepage, there's a course calendar, and the course calendar actually tells you the due dates for all the assignments. So you can actually take a look at that and see when things are due. Yay. And the due dates and for everything. As always, we do accept late papers. However, there's a grade reduction for late papers, so just to warn you about that. It says here you can use APA, MLA, or Chicago style for the source sites. Mostly you're just going to be citing your textbook, which is by Beebe and Masterson. MLA stands for the Modern Language Association. APA stands for the American Psychological Association. And Chicago style, of course, stands for Chicago style. And I actually have a little guide to APA style in our iLearn, and you can take a look at that if you want, or some students like to use Purdue OWL or other resources for their source sites and reference pages. We're only really using source sites and reference pages from Beebe and Masterson, so it's not as big of a deal to do it, but you will learn about it there and you can figure out how to do it, and it's worth points, so make sure that you do have a reference page and source sites. But Beebe and Masterson is our textbook, and that's mostly what we'll be citing for the most part. You're welcome to cite your handouts too, but of course, the information in the handouts is pretty much the same as what's in Beebe and Masterson when it comes to roles. Anyway, it's your choice whether you want to use MLA or APA or Chicago style. I know some people here are English majors, so you'll probably want to use MLA style, and then some of you maybe are communication majors. And depending on what kind of communication you're talking about, a lot of times people use APA style, but not always. APA is pretty popular. It doesn't have to be just used for psychology classes. It says here, please include a reference page at the end, which will typically just contain one source, Beebe and Masterson, but it is worth points, so make sure you do it. Please make sure you number the pages of the document, and that's really super easy to do in Microsoft Word. And it can also be done in Google Docs as well. Okay, so scrolling down on the directions, so the sections of the paper you're writing. So first you're going to start off with a brief paragraph that's an introduction that just tells us what the rest of the paper will be about. That's pretty simple and easy. It doesn't have to be very long-winded. And then we go into the two sections of the body of the paper. The first section is identifying and analyzing roles. It says here, choose any 4 characters from the film and explain 1 or 2 of Benny and Sheet's roles that the character takes on in the film. And so your textbook authors are Beebe and Masterson. And Beebe and Masterson quote Benny and Sheets about their different roles, like initiator, contributor, and joker, and all those different roles. So you can actually see the roles listed there and look them over and choose which ones are relevant to the movie that you watch, which is The Breakfast Club. Benny and Sheets roles are described in your textbook by Beebe and Masterson on pages 105 to 107 in the 11th edition, and they're also in the 10th edition as well. The page numbers are a little different, but you'll be able to find them in there. And they're also in the handouts, of course, that we have too. So if for some reason you prefer looking at the handouts, I like the handout way to do it just because they have examples, but lots of ways to look at them. You can also find this information in your handouts and in the 10th edition of the book. This section of the paper should contain at least 4 short paragraphs, 1 per character you choose. So for example, if you do like, the stoner, you'd have a paragraph for the stoner, the jock, you'd have a paragraph for the jock, the goth, you'd have a paragraph for the goth, and the custodian or janitor, you'd have a paragraph for him. So that 4 different paragraphs for each, or 4 paragraphs total in this section for each one for each character. Please make sure you supply at least 1 direct quotation with quote marks and a source citation from your textbook per paragraph defining the roles. So you're writing this as if the person that is reading it is not familiar with the Breakfast Club, basically, is what we're doing here. So for example, a lot of times you've just watched a movie with a friend and you discuss it in a certain way, but if you're discussing a film with another friend who hasn't seen the movie and you're not worried about spoilers, that's the way you do it. So you assume that the person hasn't necessarily read the book and hasn't necessarily watched the movie. You're sort of describing that, but particularly the book. So when you use a term like joker or initiator contributor, you always want to define that term, and that's how you get your quotations in there. So that's how it kind of works. So you should always, if you were to say, for example, the jock is a joker, and then you would quote what a joker is from Beebe and Masterson, who of course are quoting Benny and Sheets, and then you'd actually have an example of something that he did that was Joker-esque. So it says, please make sure you supply at least 1 direct quotation with quote marks and a source citation. Again, those can be MLA, APA, or Chicago style, from your textbook per paragraph defining the roles. For example, if you use the term initiator contributor, please define what an initiator contributor is by using a quote from the textbook for the class and provide an APA, MLA, or Chicago style source citation. And then it says, please make sure you have at least 1 detailed example from the film backing up your points per paragraph. So, for example, you might have something that the person did that was sort of Joker-esque that they might have done in an example of a Joker-esque thing that maybe Judd Nelson's character, the stoner, did, John Bender, is that he was smoking in detention. That's kind of a Joker-ish thing to do. And it, distracts from the group trying to get their task done. So, those are examples of things that he does throughout. If you were talking about him, if he was your character, or he's an information seeker and asking people what clubs they're a member of. Those are examples as well. But yeah, definitely don't assume that the reader necessarily can, maybe assume they have watched the movie once, but they're not that familiar with it. They might need more description, or maybe they've just assume they haven't watched it at all, actually would be better. And then assume that they also have not read the book. So you're like letting them know what it says in our textbook about roles, and you're also letting them know what happened in the movie and how you're kind of applying those 2 things together. All right, so that's that section where you go through the roles, explain what roles people take on, define the roles, and have an example of them taking on that role for each, 1 for each character. Okay, so you do that section, and then after that, we're going to analyze the sexism in the movie. Now, the movie itself is not really necessarily sexist, but that's debatable anyway, but mostly what we're focusing in on the sexist behavior of the characters. So it says here, although the film itself isn't necessarily sexist, things the characters say are sometimes sexist, or elements of the film reflect the sexism in our society. Tell us about a part of the film where you see sexism and explain why you find it sexist. This section will be at least 1 paragraph long. Please make sure that you have at least 1 word for word quotation with quotation marks from the film exemplifying your point per paragraph. So this is where you're going to actually quote the film and then tell us what's sexist about it. So for example, there's a part where John says to Claire, why don't you go back to the mall and just go shopping? That's a quote, I think, roughly what he says. And, that's a sexist thing, that's saying that all teenage girls like to go shopping. Anyway, you can pick something sexist in the film and talk about it. There's lots of variety of things in there. It's throughout the film, so you can pick all sorts of things that are potentially sexist and talk about it. But anyway, you are going to have an example as well. Okay. And then I give you an option here. It says here, if you would rather talk about homophobia, heterosexism, heteronormative elements in the film rather than the sexism, that would be acceptable too. So throughout the film, there's a lot of homophobia for sure. That just pops right out. And you could talk about that as well instead of sexism if you'd like. You can see it within the first few seconds of the film, actually. There's something written on the wall that's very homophobic, but, it's throughout. So interestingly enough, the film starts with a quote from David Bowie, and then it kind of goes from there. So, yeah, it's an interesting. It definitely holds up a mirror about the homophobia in our society, and you can see the way that the language, especially, is homophobic. So you can choose that to talk about that instead. Okay, and then we go to the conclusion where you briefly summarize what you have said in your paper in one short paragraph. And then it says here, please note that there is a link available in iLearn to watch The Breakfast Club. If you need technical assistance in iLearn, please contact San Francisco State University, etc. And then you'll be able to submit this paper through iLearn. So there will be a submission portal where you'll be able to upload the file. So you don't have to, print it out on paper and mail it to me or anything like that. You just simply submit it online. And if you have any trouble with that, contact IT. Here you can see a list of the characters, and they're just different nicknames. And then I have a picture of the characters, so you can see their faces, which one's which you'll probably be pretty familiar with after you watch the movie a few times. So yeah, that's the Breakfast Club essay, and you're going to be submitting that through iLearn, and I think you'll have fun writing it. This is your midterm for the class, the midterm 1. There'll be midterm 2, and there's a final, and there's different things, but this is the midterm 1, which a lot of students like to focus on because it's worth quite a few points. And if you have any questions about it, of course, I'm available as a resource for you guys. And, I've been actually assigning this in one version or another since all the way back to 1992 or 93, I think. So I've been submitting, this has been an assignment for me, definitely for a long time. And I've been watching this film over and over again and thinking about it. And its relevance to group communication. It's not like the greatest movie of all time, and it's not necessarily even, I'm not looking at this from a film studies perspective. It is a good movie, but, in a lot of people's minds anyway. But this is really to study group communication and understand the concepts is the idea here. And, when you're writing your essay, the thing you should do is write the essay. And then after you get done writing the essay, go back through this prompt and see if you did everything here. Like, it's just a little paragraph here, 2-paragraph description, really. I mean, there's some directions here, but there's a 2-paragraph description here, but it's got a lot of directions about how to do this. And it's really important because I get a lot of papers where students don't quote the textbook, they don't define their terms, they don't have examples, or the examples aren't detailed. If you read this, you can really make sure that you did everything right. I like to think of this as a grocery list. Like, if you ever go to the grocery store and you have a list and you get everything that you think you got, and then you go back through your list and you realize, oh my gosh, I forgot English muffins or whatever. That's what you should do with a prompt. You should always go back and look at the prompt when you think you're done with your essay, to see if you actually really covered everything or not. So that's what I recommend you do with this as well. Just go back to this prompt. And that'll help you as you're putting together this whole thing. But yeah, that's the idea. Have fun with the Breakfast Club midterm, and then just email me if you have any questions. I can try to answer them. If you have technical problems, IT can help you out with that. And yeah, it should be a pretty fun Should be a pretty fun assignment, I think, for you guys to write. And I'm here as a resource. Try to get it done early. I mean, I know that's easy to say, but with something like this, it can be so much fun to write if you get it done early. And if you procrastinate, it's just not as much fun. But the movie's kind of fun, and the writing is kind of fun. The topic is kind of fun. All of it can be a lot of fun to write about and just say your opinion about things, learn more about communication. But unfortunately, it also can be kind of a drag if you're like under a lot of stress. So try to get it done early. That'll make your assignment a lot more fun. And yeah, that's it. The Breakfast Club, midterm 1. And yeah, again, let me know if you have questions. I'm always here as a resource.